I would just like to start this session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and their elders past, present and future. They hold the memories, the dreams and the hopes of traditional Aboriginal Australia, and we should remember that underneath the concrete and asphalt, this land was, is and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. So today what we're going to do is have some fabulous speakers present some case studies about how they've gone about engaging their communities in FOGO and what the results of that have been. And then we're really going to open it up to a question and answer session so that you can really get the benefit of the experience. We'll circulate the slides afterwards and with contact details for further questions. So given that we've run a tiny bit late starting, there may not be all of the time in the world for those questions, but we will make sure that there is channels to follow up. So I'd just like to welcome our first speaker who's travelled furthest to be here with us today. So Jolie will come and speak about Bega's experience.
Thank you. Hello. My name's Jolie and I'm currently the Waste Services Manager, acting Waste Services Manager for Bega Valley Shire. In October last year, we commenced with our FOGO curbside service. So just to give you a bit of background around the Bega Valley, we're 1/8 of New South Wales coastline. We are a massive shire as far as geographic area relates to. However, we're quite small population, so we have around 33,000 residents in the shire, and they are a mix of farmers. There's a lot of industry, so there's CDTs, there's forestry, there's fisheries, but we also have a very large vocal proportion of our community that are absolutely passionate about sustainability. And we're fortunate that I guess our community is sort of mixed up a little bit, and that we were able to sort of infiltrate certain areas of the community depending on what their, I guess, their political sort of stance was. No? So before FOGO, we've got 16,500 curbside services that are residential. Out of that, the majority of those residents live what we would call in a town, and then we've got about 4,000 that live rurally. So what we did, and I think back in hindsight was probably a mistake, we decided that the people in the towns would have FOGO and that their red bin service would change from a weekly collection to a fortnightly collection, but we didn't actually alter the frequency for those rural residents. And in hindsight, that really made our communications that more challenging because the changes didn't apply to everybody in the Shire. So that's not me now.
So which one do you want us to make?
Yeah, that one, sorry. Yeah, the campaign started, I guess, in 2017. Before that, I went to the Waste Conference in 2016. And before the conference started, there was a FOGO workshop, and Tracy Chalk was there, as well as Anne Prince and Mike Ritchie and some others, and it was amazing because our council at that time weren't going to alter the red bin frequency. They were going to keep it as a weekly service, and Anne Prince wisely told me that was a very, very bad idea. So essentially what we did in July 2017, we decided that we were going to go down the path of FOGO. Our curbside collection contract was due to cease in July 2018. So we thought, what do we need to start now so that the community are ready? So the first thing we did was looking at the current sort of platforms we were using, and one of those was the curbside collection calendar that went out to 20,000 residents at a cost of around about $20,000. A lot of people in the Shire don't have actual letter boxes, they have post office boxes, so it was always wrong. Every single year it was always wrong. So we said, okay, let's make it an opt-in for a calendar where you literally have to ring in or send an email to get a calendar, but we'll introduce the Waste app. And the benefit of introducing the Waste app was we knew it was going to be crucial when we launched FOGO because we were changing people's collection frequency. So we we did one very small media release about FOGO once council agreed to introduce the service. And from that point onwards, we were very, very, very careful with talking about FOGO. And it does say it in my lessons learned, I think, because every time we mentioned the word FOGO, people started using the service. And we weren't licensed at that point in time to compost, so we had to be very careful with what we did. Yeah, so we launched the Waste app. From launching the Waste app, council had its own Facebook page, but it didn't have a waste page. So we wanted to have our own Facebook page, and I guess it came about because people were asking questions on the council page that the communications team just simply couldn't answer, and then the time frame between someone asking a question or us trying to resolve an issue to actually that person getting an answer was just too long. So we thought, let's launch our own Facebook page, and I wanted it to be something that would cut through all of the crap that was out there. There's so much social media out there, so we went with WTF. And the campaign was, it doesn't stand for what you think it stands for, it's waste the fact. So we were trying to be a little bit cheeky, and it was slightly controversial with council. But it was basically about saying, if you see this logo, if you see waste the facts, you know that it's come from council. It's not some conspiracy theory about us sending all our recycling to landfill, it's actually a fact. And we've always had that Facebook page basically as a slow burn. The key with using social, is you have to respond in a really timely manner, and we just weren't geared up to do that. So the tender was awarded. We were amazingly fortunate to receive 2 grants from the New South Wales EPA. Thank you so much, Sean, we love you, which totaled $641,000, which is a massive chunk of money, but you need absolutely every cent of it when you're rolling out the program. And that was split. So one part was to just launch FOGO in SUDs, and then another part of the funding was for MUDs, including putting in some pre-processing technology into those properties. So we did some quick media about we've got the grant, and then we slowly started talking about FOGO. And what we did in July is we started putting some displays out in libraries and some brochures at the tips and that sort of thing, but we really didn't start engaging the community until the start of October. And at the start of October, we went guns blazing. We did every type of platform that you could infiltrate. We actually, yes, let's see if that works. Yeah, so basically the way the team worked was I was project manager. We recruited a project officer who started 4 months before FOGO commenced, 2 customer information officers, and those 2 staff members are still with us. And I engaged an amazing marketing consultant. Councils have spent around $400,000 on introducing FOGO, but that includes buying the compostable bags, which is $100,000. So, you know, a good chunk of that was that. And out of that whole budget, which was but actually out of the EPA budget, 200 was spent on comms. Every single cent of it, plus had contingency that I've spent as well. And some of the so the most important thing for us was our community is really, really passionate on social media, and it can be really problematic without a doubt. But because our community is quite insular, we had this amazing opportunity to get information out in a timely manner, but also to nip stuff in the bud before it snowballed into these dramas. And the way we launched the Waste app and then subsequently the Facebook was I made our mayor put her pajamas on, and the whole campaign was to get the Waste app was don't get caught in your pajamas putting your bin out. And we did a TV campaign, radio campaign, print campaign around it. And it was, when it went on social media at the time, was the largest reaching Facebook post that council had ever done. And then the mayor's, the elevation of the mayor went up to here because the community saw her as a mum in her pajamas, basically. Yep, next one. This is some of the branding. So we developed some really good branding, and it's not just for FOGO, it's across the whole of Waste the Fact, so everything we do. And that included new signage for the garbage trucks, the main council office windows. what we did was we have always made sure that we really go hard on social. And we've always had print, and we continue to go through with our print campaigns and radio campaigns. Social is where we still hit it. And I went with the carrot approach, and we really praised those communities as they were using FOGO for the first time. So one thing that was really important for us in these little towns, we kind of had almost mini competitions where we knew every day how much contamination there was. We were weighing it daily, so the trucks coming in and the contamination, because we were decontaminating at the time. And so we're like, fantastic, Cobargo, which is a town, you have, 2% contamination or 1% contamination, and you're the winners this week. And it built up a bit of buy-in. Yep. So we've only got 1,000 Facebook followers, and average reach is around 30,000. When we introduced FOGO, we had 600 phone calls in the first 4 weeks, and about 400 of those were how to open the bags. And I'd rung a council in Tasmania when we bought the bags, and they'd said, be careful because the bags are hard to open. So we did videos on social. We put instructions in the bags, but everyone still thought the bags were broken. We're sitting at around 0.4% contamination rate, which is amazing, and the highest was about 2.1, which was over Christmas. And we're seeing a 30% diversion of household curbside waste from landfill, which is mind-blowing. Our community is, they're outstanding. Yep. Lessons learned, don't start talking about FOGO too soon if you've got a green bin service, because people started using the service and we weren't licensed for that. It was great that they were keen. And we planned. I'm a project manager, so by nature I do a lot of planning, plan. And we spent a lot of time getting lessons learned from other councils. One thing we are putting together is, it's about 30 pages so far. It's a lessons learned booklet that will be available to anybody that needs it, plus all of our resources. Every bit of our resourcing is going to go on council's website for anyone to use, because don't reinvent the wheel, you share. The Facebook page, the website page is getting done now, and the resources will start going online next week, and the lessons learned document probably another month, I'd say, but you can have a draft. I've got to go really fast. We did this amazing campaign where we and Sean came down for it. We used local kids to film TV ads, and they were adorable. They were 5-year-olds. And as part of that, we decided that we wanted to tell the story of FOGO. So we made a FOGO-mentary, which was a 20-minute story on why we were doing FOGO, and we used Costa Georgiadis as our ambassador, and he came down and did all of his work for free. We absolutely love him. So we had Costa, we had kids, and we had local community members making TV ads, and they did radio interviews, and that got so much buy-in, because who's going to say no to kids? You have to be proactive on social. So when we rolled out FOGO, I worked 7 days a week on social media. So that meant I was prepared to do that weekend work, and I was ruthless and brutal with people. I shut them down on social media before problems escalated. We ensured heaps of people had the waste app, and we absolutely got the lessons learned from every other council that we absolutely could, and we want to make sure that we do the same for everybody here. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Dolly. Sorry that we are going to ask you all to compress all this amazing information into a short period of time, but like we said, we'll have question and answer at the end to ask more details, and the chance to contact the panel afterwards. So I'll invite Josephine to come up from Kiama and to share Kiama's experience. Thank you. Click the next one. Okay. Wave at me. Okay. All right. So basically, Kiama, we're also down the south coast. Just to give you a bit of an overview of Kiama, we have only got about 10,000 households. In addition, that's in our urban area, and we also have a rural area as well, but we've only got 500 households in that area. So essentially what we did back in 2012, we conducted a trial, thank you. And as I said, 10,000 households. We were at a 60% resource recovery rate. We don't have a landfill. Ours closed in 2004 and 2006 respectively. And as a result, this is a regional council which we're surrounded by councils that all have their own landfill. So with us, because we don't, all of our waste from 2006 currently goes to one of the most expensive landfills in Australia, our next door neighbour. So waste is a priority when it comes to council because it
equates to dollars. So I'm lucky in that respect because I have quite a lot of support from management and councils when it comes to waste. It's always a priority. So our service was, prior to the trial, was a weekly garbage, a fortnightly recycling, and a fortnightly green waste. And our red bin looked like 47% compostable, 19% recyclable, and the rest was garbage. So we saw this as an opportunity not only to talk about food and garden organics, but also to sort of combat that 19% recyclable. So ours was also about the frequency of service. So our service, when we conducted the trial, was weekly food and garden organics, weekly recycling, and fortnightly garbage. And I don't know if there's any other council, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but in Australia that actually offers this throughout the year across all of the households. Is there? No? No. You're disagreeing with me. Pardon? Weekly all bins? Okay. Right. That's what I wanted to clarify, whether or not there were any. Where are you? So, I guess it's the size of your bins too is also the other thing for that. Yes.
Yeah, it's standard, same as last.
Okay, we have 3 bins for the garbage, 80, 140 or 240.
Okay,
Yes.
120.
Yes. Okay, so with the trial, what we did was we decided to choose one of our 10 zones, waste zones, to conduct the trial. And to choose that trial zone, we chose our zone 5. There's 917 households in this zone. Thank you. All of them had green waste bins currently, so we were doing green waste collections since 2005. Primarily residential homes, no short-term rentals or multi-unit dwellings. We had a community hall to conduct our community information sessions and a shopping complex so that we can conduct shopfront information kiosks, which was a new thing for council and very, very effective. And we were an isolated zone, so therefore there was no confusion with the people across the street. Why are they putting out their bins out, that often? So that's why we chose this particular zone for our trial. Thank you. So our trial was primarily going to run for a year, but it actually only went for 8 months because our councillors were quite keen to get the results. So first thing we did was we secured, like Bega, a program ambassador. And he is a local identity that does a lot of radio broadcasting on the ABC Illawarra, Peter Gabriel, and he was very, very effective. John Gabriel, sorry, not Peter Gabriel, the singer. Yeah, I'm thinking, John Gabriel, sorry. We developed a video of what the new service would look like using John, and we developed resources. So our mayor was our representative from council. So we slowly introduced it through letters being dropped to the letter boxes in that waste zone 5. We also produced a calendar. We tried the idea of no calendar. Our residents expect that calendar, so we still go ahead with that. Bin stickers, information brochures, our kitchen caddies, bin tags, banners, promo shirts, you name it. And we secured a green team that would help me sort of distribute this information to the residents. We distributed our waste calendar, which only went till October because this started in November. So then people saw their calendar and thought, oh, sure, why is that? And then we actually had some words around, this is when we'll be introducing our organic service, food and organics. We also applied a reduction. It's only very small, but it was a reduction in their domestic waste for those residents in that zone because they were part of this trial. We invited people to a community information session. We held 7 of them. It was a lot. And the reason being is because I think we were one of the first areas to have NBN connected. So they were trialling this communication system where you can actually, and this is old school now, I know, but you can actually, if you can't come to the service, to the actual session, you can log in from home, and it was interactive. So I had a whole screen of people that I could talk to, as well as people in the audience. The minister came down, it was very exciting. Anyway, so they were held at the community information sessions, and people that came in got their information kit. But for those that didn't, which was a good 90% of them that didn't come, we then distributed them door to door. And so what was an hour session at those at the community infos, we had to condense down to about a 2-3 minute engagement, which was pretty full on. But our approach was a staged approach. We have 10 zones. We decided, let's put the power in the people. Let them be our champions. So our Zone 5 people were our guinea pigs. We tweaked it. And what I also say, with the commencement of this trial, no compostable liners. Okay, we had no compostable liners. At that point in time, thank you, we were managing the waste ourselves. We applied the City to Soil program, and we did that to this, thank you, this zone, and it was tedious, but it was an idea to know what we were getting in terms of a hands-on approach for us to identify what were people throwing away. And our contamination was around about the 2% at that point. But we learnt from that and we tweaked it. So then when we were ready to go out to the rest of the zones, we were able to develop it from there. So the trial was very, very informative for us. But we also set up information kiosks where our approach was, we go to them, don't expect them to come to us. So we're literally in their faces all the time. For 2 weeks, we were at the little local store and we engaged with over 250 households. This area had 917, so it was a pretty good uptake. And as I said, we started the ball rolling. They were our champions. They started talking to the other zones. Okay, so then, now, the next point there I'm going to say, we offered an in-home service. The people that were a bit irate, oh, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with this? We can come over to you and we can come and just assess your waste. Don't worry about your neighbours, we'll talk about yours. Not one person to this day has ever taken us up on that offer. So there's a lesson to be learned on that one, so catch them out. Anyway, next one's conducting visual bin audits. This is purely for education reasons only. It's really important to know what's in those bins and what people are doing wrong. And our bin tagging system worked very, very well. We sort of borrowed that off Bankstown from years ago when they developed the Recycle Right program. Very effective tool, and it was something that we used quite successfully actually. Also had an incentive with a prize draw. And we provided regular updates, you know, as to that particular waste zone. So we concluded the trial. As I said, we were doing the City to Soil program, thank you. And we were able to then apply for a grant, which we received $211,230. We developed the rollout of our program. So once again, we did a staged approach. We didn't go wham bam, thank you ma'am. We've only got 10,000 homes, but we still felt it was community engagement. 99% of this was community engagement. We have our own waste services. We do our own servicing. We don't have contractors. So therefore, it's easy. It's so easy for me. I can work very closely with our waste guys and get communication from them on what things are going out and what's working, what's not working. So we, as I said, staged approach. We went to Zone 4 because they were geographically the closest to Zone 5, and then we kept going from there. As I said, we ended up developing champions because social media, as you rightly pointed out, was a very key part, but it was still relatively new around 2012, and council did not know what to do with it. Honestly did not know what to do with it. So we were not allowed to respond to any social media. I think that was hard. That was so hard for me. But what we did was we developed our website as best as we can and hope we could direct people through. But it wasn't. In this day and age, I totally agree, social media has to be up there as part of your communication piece. But what we did do was that it was so interesting. Years went down. It took us 4 years to roll this out across the municipality. We did it a slow approach, but it's been effective. But what's happening is that people are answering other people's questions. I don't have to do a thing. I don't have to do a thing because the ones that have been doing it for a while have worked with it. So you've always got the negatives that will say, this isn't great, blah, blah, blah. And then once they start working with it, obviously they can see the benefits to it. So that's the kit that we rolled out. There's our bin system, information kiosk. That's pretty much what it is. That's an example of our bin tagging service, the invitation that went out to our residents. We give back our compost to our residents. Okay, once a year, we give away 4 bags for free. If you want them to be part of the solution, you've got to reward them. And that has given us a great incentive for people to always have the composting, our organic Kiama, which is what we branded it. FOGO was still a new word back in 2012. So it was, we called it It's Okay, organic Kiama. So our resources was always promotional things. We have hot stamping on our green lids that said no food. So we thought, oh, what do we do? Replace those lids? No, put a sticker over the top. But we branded our logo. When we went into a zone, those bins were classed with the OK Organics logo, so that we knew that they were done, and people could start seeing that all of, whenever the bins were being serviced. Communication, information, assessment. I wheeled around a big kitchen bench. I literally said, if you're coming to see me explain to you what happens in a typical kitchen, well then I'm going to set the scene. So I did. I had this kitchen with plastic fruit. That was an example. I couldn't do real fruit. But anyway, lessons learned. Identify your audience. We do have mugs. We do have short-term rentals. And we do have special medical needs. Don't forget, we went from a weekly to fortnightly. And we have households with nappies. So be prepared. Make sure you've got an answer for everything. Offer that in-home service. And let me know if you get any response. Because it's funny because you do that at the very end and then they go, oh, I'll just check with my daughter, make sure she's doing it right. So blame the kids. Households with nappies, we developed a brochure. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We know that there was other councils that had done trials, very extensive trials. We gave them that option. But also what we did with the nappy people, I'm going to forget that. What we also did with the nappy people was we gave them, there's two things we did. With the nappy people, we actually gave them a trial. Now, has anybody heard of VM3? It's, they're actually in the coffin industry, like odour industry to do with coffins and stuff. So they developed these deodorizer pads. And so we said, oh, maybe that's a good thing. So what we did was we gave about quite a big stash of them, and we conducted a trial. So anybody that we identified as having a nappy situation in their household, we gave them a 3-month supply, asked them to trial them by cutting the pads in a certain size, stick them under the lid, and then in 3 months' time we came back. We had 30 households. It was only a small trial. That was enough. 30 households. We went back to them. These were the real negative people. We went back to them 3 months later. Only 3 people responded, and they said it was great, not a problem, and that was it. We didn't have to address that problem anymore because we had done the trial and nothing came of it. Because what our intention was to work with BM3 to make it a commercially viable product, but we didn't have any evidence to say that it was a need. Staged approach, as I said, was really, really helpful. And the other thing we did, we put deodorizers on our truck. So when we went out to McDonnell Johnson to build a new truck, we had it as our spec. We want a deodorizer. Deodorizer didn't quite work. So I'm just going to say we did it. According to our guys, it didn't quite work. We used to keep getting jammed. The idea was to use the deodorizer after it was serviced, and that pacified people. In the trial, we did have that deodorizer till after about 10 zones, we got about 4 or 5 zones, we were doing it, and it pacified people. Well, we haven't had it for quite a few years, and no one said a thing. So it's sort of like what I'm trying to say here is that have an answer, think of all your concerns, the possible concerns, and see that you have got an answer for it. Now, compostable liners, we had none. But then zone 4, that was the second zone we went into, we realised we can't take that option away from people. But we're not a shop front. Council is not a shop front. So what I started to do was to go to all the local corner stores, the general little corner stores, retailers in the area. We've only got 1 Woolworths in our township. We've got 3 IGAs. And as much as we spoke to Woolworths, which Peter can attest to, we passed this over to Peter and said, we're now rolling out to this zone. Here are some shop fronts you can go, retailers you can go and approach. Every zone has easy accessibility to these compostable liners. And we just did that as an option. But when we did the education, it wasn't the first thing we talked about. It was using other means of managing food waste, but compost
actually
keep
what people
what people are
using
using quite effectively,
and
council has no buy-in to that whatsoever.
Result, 40% reduction in waste to landfills.
2012, and we're still at that. We have 38% increase to recycling, and we had 105% increase in our organics. All of a sudden, the gardeners came out of the woodwork, so our green waste went straight through the roof. So we've got about an 80-20. You're looking at it visually, 80% green and 20% organic, and less than 0.8% really is our contamination, and that's been our highest, 0.8 actually. So I'll just use that as our standard contamination. All of our material, after the first two zones, we went in for to build a facility. We couldn't, so we're actually sending it to Soilco, which processes all of our material. But like I said, we give it back once a year in July, 4 bags per household free of charge. That is, I think that's what it was. Yeah. Thank you. Now you can remember it.
Yeah, no, I've got one of my laptops.
Sorry guys about slight technical difficulty, but yes, thank you Josephine for continuing to share. We'll hopefully be able to get the slides for you shortly. But we just now like to welcome Aisha, who will talk to us off the cuff about Penrith's FOGO.
Thanks so much, Jenny. So I'm from Penrith City Council. I'm the Resource Recovery Coordinator. Just to set the scene, Penrith is a metropolitan Sydney council, but we're on the fringe. We're at the bottom of the Blue Mountains, and we're bordered by Blacktown to the east. We have approximately 70 to 72,000 households at the moment. We're mostly single unit dwellings. We are growing in high density and urban areas and along the rail corridor. We have about 200,000 households, residents, and it's split quite dramatically. It has been in the past. So we have a rural area and we have an urban area. So our story starts in 2009, where we introduced FOGO into our community. We only introduced to the single and dual occupancy houses of the urban areas in the city. We left the rural areas out, and we also left the multi-unit areas out. And the decision was made for that for the reasons of audit. We did not see very much food and garden organic waste going into those bins. So we went straight from a 2-bin service to a 3-bin service, where our red bin went from weekly to fortnightly and smaller, and our green bin was a new bin, and that was a weekly 240-litre food and garden organic service. We started this process with our councillors in 2005, where they adopted a strategy to go down this path, and the main impetus for that was about the waste levy and how much that was going to impact council, and the need for the fact that we don't have any landfills in the Sydney area that are opening, and we're running out of space, so we did need to do something with our waste. So we introduced that in 2009. The story does go along that it was quite a rocky start. It was at the time where council had no experience with social media, and council had a We Hate Penrith Bins Facebook page, and we didn't have an app, and it was quite a laborious time. We did have to do a lot of face-to-face engagement. We had to engage with 55,000 households about FOGO, and it was spread across a very large area in the Penrith city. We did ride that wave. We did a lot of things to assist residents. We did consult with those residents who were upset about it, and we did a few things to help them use the service more easily and not have so many problems in using that service. And one of the main things that we did was introduce the compostable bag liners. So we started providing those, and we now provide those every quarter. So we provide a packet of 60 bags every quarter now, and that helps a great deal. We did demonstrations with the kitchen tidy bins and showing people this is how you scrape a carrot into a kitchen tidy bin, and this is how, instead of scraping the chopping board into the bin, you scrape it into this bin, and it's not that hard. It's just making a small change in your habit. So we did, oh gosh, too far. So we did do that process. Coming along the line, we did a number of campaigns to educate and engage with our residents to get them to feel more normalise that service. as more residents move into our city, and as there's transition of people, a lot more people are coming in. They're seeing, oh, this is good, this is new, but it was not as poorly accepted as it was in the first instance with all that social media backlash. And now what we're seeing is quite a big transition. The vast majority of people really like the service, and what we did see in our last tendering process, which was only recently, was that we had a very small but very loud minority of people who don't wish to participate in the food and garden organic service. But it's not so much that they don't wish to participate, it's that they don't like the idea of their red bin getting collected every fortnight. So that's been quite a large hurdle for us. We do have, that's my sort of summary of what I just said. So we introduced, I think it was in 2014, a contamination management field team. And that it started out as these guys who operated at the MRF, and they rode around on scooters and they looked in people's bins and put stickers on their bins. Sadly, they weren't the kind of people that residents wished to engage with. And after a number of incidents in the field, we changed our approach and we sent out a team of people who actually were trained in communicating with people and who weren't afraid to actually have conversations. So if someone goes, what are you doing in my bin? They could go, actually, I'm doing this. Would you like to come and see? And this is what we're doing. Do you have the bags? Do you have this? And it was a much more helpful and much more friendly approach. And we would still stick at the bins, but we would actually actively engage with people. So if we saw people in the street, it was, hi, how are you going? We're just looking in your bin, rather than quick look in the bin and let's race away on our scooter. So it was quite a interesting change. As part of that program, what we found was our team in the field needed quite a lot of support, and I'll talk about the communications and creative programs we used for that. What was this? Yeah, so those staff who went out in the field were armed, I guess, with a stick and a carrot, carrot and stick type approach. So we really focus on education. We want people to come around. We try and get them to change their behaviour. That whole thing about going and auditing someone's waste in the field, we have done that on numerous occasions, including our CFO, who did not believe that he could put out his red bin every fortnight. We go to people's houses, we lay out a tarp, we put all the waste on the tarp, we separate it out, show them that it can fit in the 3 bins and they will be okay. It's just about separating, and we do that demonstration to actually show them that can be okay. We have done that on about 7 or 8 occasions. I've done it myself. So it does work. However, where you've got people who are who refuse to engage, you knock on their door, they're inside, like, don't answer the door, and they refuse to participate in that program, we don't want for our other 99.8% of residents to have to pay for their bad habits. So we've introduced a service which is a contamination service. So what that is that if people cannot get it right, and we've tried and tried, we do have to demonstrate that we have attended their property and tried to get them to change their behaviour. Once they can't do that, we actually provide them with a different service where we take away their green leaf bin, we give them back their large red leaf bin collected every week, but they are charged accordingly for that service. So at this moment, it's $925 as opposed to the sustainable service, which is $399. So it is quite a large increase in their fee. Okay. So the next, the campaign I did want to talk about was we actually engaged a creative company, a marketing agency, to develop a program for us to support our, to support our team in the field. So we put the Thanks Penrith, You've Got It Sorted. We actually briefed that company, that agency, really, really well. We told them the whole story. We told them our issue, that we've got this minority of people who do kick up a bit of a play up this funny idea that, this service is really bad. And then we've got the vast majority of people who are really doing a great job and who have accepted and taken on board. So we did the Thanks Penrith, You've Got It Sorted. We tried to refocus it on the positive messaging rather than looking at how we can put out those fires. We did introduce the Waste app through Impact Apps. That's been very useful, and again, it's trying to get people to engage with that and look up those tricky, how do you recycle this, what do you do with that, how do you manage soup, all of those funny questions that you do get when you introduce this kind of service. So we did a lot of these promotions as part of this campaign, and it was really about supporting our team in the field so that they can get the best out of our community. Is that the last slide? Jenny, is that the last slide? Yeah, and that's just the information about the waste tap. So I guess Penrith's story is quite different because we are quite a broad area. We do have a large number of residents, so we possibly don't have the scope with the resourcing to focus on those small communities, but we do engage with our residents in the street, in the field. We do shopping centre displays and things, but we do try more so to do it in their own home to try and help them to sort their waste better and hopefully achieve some really good outcomes. But we did really get a lot out of going to that agency and working with them to come up with a brand and a campaign that we could roll out that really connected people with what they were doing was a really positive thing and something they could be really proud of.
Thanks, Aisha, sorry. And yeah, we'll just invite Brad up to be the last of our council case studies. Just a little bit of an update. Once we've heard from the last of our 4 council case studies, we'll also be hearing from Envirocom, and then we'll be ushering you out the door into the lovely space over here, and we'll have a much more informal question and answer session for those people who can hang around a little bit longer. Just outside here, you'll be able to ask those panellists who can stay your questions directly, but we won't be able to do more of the formal panel session that we were hoping. But Brad, come and share Canterbury Bankstown story.
Okay, so Canterbury Bankstown is not on the south coast, and we have about 10 times the population of one of the councils, and about, I think, 10,000 households, you said. We've got that around 2 train stations. So we've got a different situation in Canterbury Bankstown than some of the others we've talked about. So we, before we would go down the path of implementing a FOGO, we did a trial first to see what the impact would be, how effective it would be in our area. We did this trial from August 2017 to January 2018. We did that specifically so we could include a Boxing Day or a Christmas event, because we have Christmas, we also have Ramadan in Canterbury Bankstown. That is an event that produces so much food waste you have no idea. So we needed to make sure that we're including something that mimics that. We did 200 suds and 100 muds in the trial. These are the actual streets of the trial. We chose one of the, 100 of the suds are in a single street, another 100 in another street. We chose those because one had responded really well to our Recycle Right program, and we've gone down and checked their yellow bin, and another because they'd not responded particularly well. So trying to get a good representative sample, and they're demographically representative of the LGA, so those 300 as much as we can. And the trial involved a control area, so we could see what was happening outside of the trial, as well as 5 audits. So a baseline audit, 3 audits during the trial, and then including Boxing Day. So they're out there, you know, going through people's bins on Boxing Day, and the end of trial audit as well. In terms of our engagement, because it was a short trial, what we went for is high impact engagement. So before the trial, we had to change the green bin to a weekly service rather than a fortnightly service, so new calendars. We actually door knocked every single one of those houses and gave them a caddy, a letter, the calendar, FAQs, and explained the process to them. If we didn't get to speak to them on the first time, we went back on the second door knock and spoke and tried again. So we spoke to over 60% of the households directly, so face-to-face engagement. And then throughout the trial, we did a whole bunch of stuff to remind them. So we told them all about it. We said that your bin changes to a weekly service, just start putting food in it. Then the week that it started, we went and put fluoro stickers on all their bins saying food trial starting today. In the muds, we put up posters in all the foyers saying remember to put your food in your green bin. We did postcards twice throughout the trial saying remember to put your stuff in your green bin. We went and had on-site engagement, which was highly unsuccessful. So one of the people in the street of muds literally didn't speak to a single person. Sorry, street of suds didn't speak to a single person. In the muds, it was more It worked better because people generally had to come downstairs. They could go into a prize to win $100 voucher, so they came down, said hello, ticked off, took their voucher, ticked off. So it was highly intensive engagement because we knew it wasn't going to be very long. Our results. So our results were not great. I'm going to say, in fact, our results were terrible. So what we ended up with is an overall 2.5% diversion from the red bin into the green bin when we looked at all of the participating houses. So really low diversion rate. Overall, we got 400 grams, essentially 400 grams of diversion from the red bin into the green bin, and we looked at it overall. For the suds, we got, it was almost a kilo, just below a kilo diversion from the red bin to the green bin, which is just a bit smaller than that bag of apples. So there's a lot of work to get a bag of apples into a green bin, but for the muds, it was actually diversion of 2 caramello koalas. So really, it was an awful lot of work to get not much of a result. But most importantly for us, what we saw is in our suds, our green bin contamination went from about 2% up to 6%. So it became an unacceptable level of contamination in our green bin. In our muds, we got a contamination rate of 32%, making it a completely unusable waste stream. So the impact of putting a FOGO into those buildings meant that what a clean stream that we had became an unusable contaminated stream. So what does that mean for us? So we'd actually done, which I don't really have time to talk about, we actually did this huge big benchmarking study of FOGOs around Australia and around the world and did a whole lot of modelling on it. And what we found is if there was a 3% diversion rate, if we implemented a FOGO in our council, we'd actually have savings of about $1.2 million landfill costs. We'd have to pay $7 million to roll out the program to the council, and we'd have annual costs of $3 million. So it became a hugely expensive business for us based on the benchmarking study. And the benchmarking study was 3.3% diversion. We only had 2.5, so in fact, the numbers would have been even greater than that. But really what for us is the most crucial element is we've got a population that's going to grow by about 100,000 in the next few years. The graph on the right is actually showing the change from single-use dwellings to multi-use dwellings in our LGA. So we're losing our single-use dwellings, and Canterbury Bankstown is one of the LGAs in the state that the state government has given, currently on hold, but given permission for people to literally go and build granny flats and dual occupancies on their land without any extra approval processes. So that's what we're saying we're going to get. But if this regulation comes off, which is currently we have a year grace, or I think it's 2 years, we could end up with 200,000 or 300,000 people in extra dwellings on the one land. But for us, also one of the really important things is what that map there shows you is recent arrivals to Australia in the last 5 years. Right? So all the darkest red areas are people who've moved to Australia in the last 5 years. When you overlay that with people who don't speak English, exactly the same. So 20% of those people in that area don't speak English. It's not that they speak English, language other than English at home, they don't speak English at all. In that area, we also have private rentals, exactly the same. All of those are private rentals. So and you lay it over another map, which is, have you moved in the last 2 years? It's exactly the same. So what we have is all these suburbs across the LGA where we have transient populations who don't speak English, who've got no connection to the LGA. We have got contamination rates of about 30% in our yellow bin in some of these suburbs. How we can get a green bin to function properly is quite difficult. And in 7 of those suburbs, we recently did an anti-dumping campaign, which in 19 days, we found over 3,000 illegal dumps. So managing a FOGO program is the least of our problems at the moment. So essentially, we won't be moving to a FOGO program in the LGA because we can't see that it will be functional for us. In some areas, it works beautifully where you've got smaller communities, you can engage with people, they most likely own their properties most of the time and mostly got suds. In some LGAs, it's probably just not, it's not functional.
So today is a session about engagement, but we really wanted to share Canterbury Bankstown's experiences with engagement. You know, many of you will be familiar with some of the really great stuff that Canterbury Bankstown has been doing in engagement, trialling different methods, investing time in doing really rigorous evaluation to see how well they are working. And I guess the message is that sometimes you can do fabulous engagement and still not get the outcomes that you want. And sometimes your engagement isn't quite hitting the mark, and what you need to do is, you know, draw on other lessons learned and continue working. But sometimes the actual service can be what's not working for your community. So we really wanted to include that as an example. Particularly, we're not here to talk about whether you should go FOGO or food waste recycling or things like that, but to raise the question that perhaps, particularly if you have a high proportion of MUDs more in the inner suburbs of Sydney particularly, or other metropolitan areas around the state, that this may not be the right solution for you, and it's not because your engagement isn't working, it's because the service itself. And so we know that there's a number of food waste only recycling services that are happening. There's, you know, obviously a trial that's just about to start in the City of Sydney, and we do hope that we'll be able to share some of the learnings from those as well over time as we go. So I'm just going to bring Rachel up now from Envirocom. Rachel actually has a wealth of information about an amazing project that Envirocom has done, and she's got 3 minutes to share it with you. Because unfortunately, ACOM, who's been wonderful to share us this room, does need the room back. So I'll hand over to Rachel. She's going to whiz through. We're going to send the slides out and then contact these up for questions after.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jenny. So I'm presenting this presentation on behalf of my colleague Anna Ricketts, who is our Business Development and Learning Advisor who oversaw this project. Thank you. So Envirocom, there's a bit of background about us, but you can look at that in the slides. So basically the program involved 3 neighbouring councils in Victoria, so Moyne, Corangamite and South Grampians Shire. Essentially these 3 different council areas all had FOGO services, and they'd had them between 5 and 10 years, depending on the council area. The challenge with these 3 different council areas is they had a lot of different servicing options. So while Moyne and Corangamite had a compulsory fortnightly FOGO service, you had Southern Grampians had an opt-in service. So there were some differences between them there as well. So what they basically understood was that the FOGO services were essentially just being used as garden organic bins. So very low quantities of food in these bins, which prompted this project itself and to do a bit of research to find out what's going on. So within the research phase, there were some initial meetings had with council to get a bit of background to, you know, the lead into the FOGO services and the problems that the councils are facing. There was a desktop review and some community surveys. So these were conducted by an external provider, Market Facts Research. So they, you know, call, and I think there was 300 residents per council area that were engaged over the community survey. And as part of the community survey, they asked participants if they would be interested in participating in a focus group. So a number of these focus groups were held by Anna herself, of about 6 to 8 per group. She wouldn't recommend any more than 8 to 10 per group, because you start to get a bit too many people in the room, too many opinions, and you run a bit short and have a bit of things going on. So yeah, that sort of 6 to 10 is an optimal size there. Then the next phase involved the intervention. So based on the outcomes of these community surveys and focus groups, trying to develop a targeted approach for each of the 3 different council areas, because the interesting thing that came out of this process is that although they were neighbouring councils and had very similar demographics within them, their barriers and behaviours tended to be quite different. So that required targeted education campaigns. And then these campaigns were implemented. This is a currently ongoing project, so we're down in the review and recommendation process, and at the end of that, the business case will be developed. So a lot of the barriers were terminology, knowledge of acceptability. I'm sure these seem pretty obvious to a lot of us here. Capacity issues, caddies versus liners. Some of them had caddies, some of them didn't. Some of them introduced caddies and liners at a later date. Odour concerns, limited understanding of the end use and the environmental benefits. And the interesting thing is that we need to consider a lot of these barriers. We can't consider them in isolation of each other because a lot of them do have lots of overlap. So in terms of terminology, there's just so many different terms you could use. And what was found as part of the focus groups is that even within council areas, different terms were being used. So on some print materials, they may refer to it as FOGO brackets, food organics, garden organics, and then, you know, in some radio, it might be your green lid garden bin or your lime green lid food and garden bin. So even within the council areas, there was a range of terminology being used, and that also created confusion about the service. Acceptability, as you would expect, there's a wide range of difference between the acceptability of various items. So garden waste, everyone's pretty much across that. Fruit and vegetables, people are pretty comfortable with that because they think of composting and worm farming. But the things that are traditionally not accepted in compost and worm farms, like meat and fish and dairy, even less, were the items that were far less understood as being acceptable. So yeah, just back on there. So the key thing, one interesting thing that came out of it was being mindful of the language that you use. So because a lot of people through these focus groups indicated that they use compost bins and worm farms. So they sort of had a bit of a block about using the service because they think, well, I want to use my compost bin and my worm farm. And it's not that we want all the food waste in a curbside service. We just want it out of the landfill stream. So rather than saying put all your food in the FOGO, perhaps you can be better received if it, you know, food shouldn't be in the landfill bin. So if you want to compost or garden, you know, then it's a complementary service rather than a replacement service for the good work that so many residents were already doing. They found that environment was actually the highest priority for the people within the focus group. Then convenience and cost was the last one there. We'll have to skip through, yes, sorry. A lot of people didn't understand the end use and the environmental benefits, so, you know, waste being invisible and not acknowledging it as a resource. Skip that one there. So basically, in terms of the targeted programs, all these circles represent the extent of which, or basically the weighting or the value of that various barrier. So you can see they were quite different. So while there was pretty good knowledge in some areas, you know, Moynshire had more knowledge, but they needed that specialised knowledge, getting into the nitty-gritty, whereas in South Grampians, where it was an opt-in service, the greatest barrier is, you know, engaging people to motivate them to opt into that service. An intervention strategy was developed for each of the 3 different councils based on those specific targeted approach. We'll go on. It's still it's still in the progress phase. So the final takeaway from this is that, and I think we've heard it today as well, there is no one-size-fits-all FOGO model for implementation. As much as we'd love to say, tell me what I should put on the collateral or what terminology should I use, there isn't an answer because every community is different and you need to know and understand your community. You need to understand their needs, their expectations and their barriers. This is what's going to shape your approach to collateral and whether or not you need caddies and liners or whether your council area or your LGA is engaged enough to wrap it in paper or put it in loose. Choose your terminology and stick to it across all mediums and ensuring that there is that talking between council departments. I'm sure we all can understand that that doesn't always happen. You might have a comms team and a waste department and a resource recovery department and people are putting out different materials and they don't align with each other. So it's really important everybody's on board and everybody's communicating and talking to each other, particularly with that use of terminology. Consider your language choices and be sure to communicate the what happens next so that people do understand that their waste isn't invisible. It doesn't get picked up and disappear forever. And so rather than filling a hole with it, we want to make use of this great resource. And we'll leave it there. If you do have any other questions, we can direct them to Anna there as well. Jenny.
So I just want to thank all of our panellists today and Rachel for coming to share with us. Apologies for some of the hiccups today. If you can stay around, and particularly for those of our panel who can, we really invite you to rather quickly shuffle into the space just out here so we don't put a comment out. But do hang around if you can and ask some of our panelists the questions that I'm sure you have. We will circulate information as well. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And thanks to those people who joined us virtually. We are going to finish the meeting now, but do get in contact with me, Jenny Downs, if you have any questions that you'd like.